Welcome to the music edition of Punch TV. We all love music. We are music nerds, true and true, throughout this show. And today we have something really special in store for you. Craig's going to bring a few of his guitars. Even Hank's going to show off some of his musical instruments on Tweet Beat. I'm going to talk a little bit about comics and rock. And we have a very special guest, Ron Spizziri. He is the man in the Saskatoon music scene. We got to go over to his place and look at his collection and talk to him about music in Saskatoon. So stay tuned for that. You absolutely do not want to miss this episode.
The first part is all rock.
Yeah.
What I call contemporary rock as opposed to 60s. So it starts at A. It's all alphabetical by the group name, of course.
I'm very excited because I am in the collection of Ron Spizziri, who, if you don't know who Ron Spizziri is, you do not have your finger on the pulse of the music scene in Saskatoon. A lot of us in this fair city owe a great deal to this man who's been involved with Shaw, Waiting on the Midnight Hour, and CFCR, Nightwaves, probably the longest running indie rock show in Canada, or for sure, and Records on Wheels.
Yeah, good old Records on Wheels.
Okay, so Records on Wheels was a record store. It was in 3 different locations. Yep. Originally Army and Navy Mall, then it moved to the Bus Mall, then it was on 2nd Avenue. Right. And a lot of my personal collection and my friends bought records from your store. So thank you.
Well, thank you. That's how I got my records from people like you that were buying records for me. So. And
also you were involved with making and producing music in Saskatoon under Rock and Rod Records.
Rock and Rod Records. That was a little later. I got involved with a band called The Independents, and they asked me to be their manager. And I was like, what do I know? But we did very, very well. We were sort of riding on the coattails of the Northern Pikes, who were just starting out. They had offers to play out on the East Coast and so on, and I got to know all 6 of the major label A&R guys, and it was just a one-on-one. I'd hate to do it today because you just lost that. It was all about contacts. You just pick up the phone and talk to them and arrange interviews or gigs, whatever. So it was quite easy.
Like compared to now, where anybody who has like a modem can promote their band, etc. But you have no idea if they're actually good.
That's right. 1 or 2 of the A&R reps said about 80 to 90% of what they received in the way of demos, it just went right into their waste paper basket. It wasn't even worth listening to.
No. So. Well, the internet is great now for being able to go to places like Bandcamp and listening to stuff and sampling and all that. Yeah. But back in the day when you ran your shop, there was no internet. And how I learned about music was magazines and the reviews that you would handwrite and put on albums. And it's like garage rock, sounds like the Velvet Underground. It's like, okay, I'm going to try that. So thank you for doing those reviews. They were very formative and important for guiding me as a consumer. So it was very good. If you were to do it all over again in today's economy, would you start a record store?
Definitely not. People's attitudes changed. As soon as the internet came along, suddenly the customers knew more than you did. Whereas in the past, as you said, I would recommend something, say, well, if you like Velvet Underground, you might like these guys. And I always had a guarantee to anyone who bought anything on my recommendation, if you're not happy with it, if I misled you, bring it back. And no one ever did, because I knew what they were buying. I wanted them to keep coming back. Nowadays, it's just a whole different ball game. As I said, when the internet came along, I'd say to someone, I know what you've been buying. I know what's in your collection. You'll really like Naked Prey, as an example. Oh, well, I don't know. I'll have to go look it up. And all the fun was coming out of it. It'd be the same thing if you're collecting comic books, coins, stamps. Well, I don't know. I know that might be rare, but I got to go do some research. And it took the fun out of it. The spontaneity was gone.
So words of wisdom to burgeoning collectors, and Tony's going to talk about the collection a little later in the show. But okay, storage and care. What are the most important things to consider?
Keep them off the floor, mostly because of water damage more than anything. As far as storage, they should be close together, but not scrunched really, really tight. And they shouldn't be lying flat. They should be standing up. And if you do get an album, especially if you're buying used albums, and there's some dirt, someone said sticky fingers or something on it, what I do is just wash it in a very mild dishwater solution, and just don't get the label wet, and then just wipe it dry, rinse it, and then wipe it dry, and it's as good as new kind of thing. As long as there's no scratches or anything like that, defects in it, and that's all you have to do. So they'll never go out of style. You can keep listening to them unless they're defective or if you've dropped them or scratched them, of course. Other than that, no problem.
If you love them, they'll keep loving you back.
Definitely. That's a good way of putting it. I like that. I love my records.
Again, thank you so much, because I'm a big fan of everything that you've done for the music scene, and we're not even scratching the surface, which is a bad term to use with a record collection, but of what you've done. So we'll definitely have to have you back on the show to talk more about music, because it's such a big part of all of our lives, and certainly it is of yours as well.
Punch TV is brought to you in part by Amazing Stories, providing Saskatoon with comics, games, toys, graphic novels, t-shirts, and more for over 22 years. Online at AmazingStoriesComics.com. In person on 8th Street in Saskatoon.
Hello, lovely ladies and or dudes. My name is Hank. This is Tony. And today on Tweet Beat, we're going to be talking about some tunes. That's right, this month we are going to suggest about 4 albums that if you haven't got them already, you should go out and purchase. You should buy them, you should listen to them, you should love them. Right now on Tweet Beat. Godsmack, When Legends Rise, tries to get away with using their standard polished rock formula just one more time. And it works! Several songs on the album are unforgettable, 70 out of 100. If you don't enjoy it after the first run, listen to it just one more time. Recently, The Long Shot dished out their debut album, Love Is for Losers! And speaking of love, do you love Green Day? Do you love to rock and or roll? If you answered yes to these questions, then this album is for you! 68 out of 100. Never Gonna Die by Pennywise is everything you would expect. Fast-paced tunes with live while you can attitude that can't be ignored. They've been kicking out the jams for years, and if this album says anything, they won't be giving up the fight anytime soon. 72 out of 100. Hashtag, they all float down here. They all float down here. The self-titled LP from Goat Girl is all tasty country sleaze covered in cracker drool, seasoned with salty sounds and served with a side of viper fish. Track 13 is called Hank's Theme, so obviously this album is the bee's knees. 77 out of 100. It's weird, it's crazy, and it's unique. Ish. And that about wraps things up, but before we're done, as you can see popping up around me, I have guitars too. That's right, I do collect bass guitars. I've got a few other guitars like the Merlin, the Cigar Box guitar, I got a sweet ukulele, but unlike Craig, who I'm sure selects his guitars because of the year that the wood was cut, the year the tree fell and then was molded into a guitar, the different types of wood, the coatings over top, the pickups, all the crazy things. I really picked out the guitars because, well, they look super cool, just like me. Anywho, that about wraps things up. My name is Hank. That's Tony. See you next time. Tweet Beat.
What up, movie lovers? I'm Craig Silliphant, the Movie Geek, and this is 5-Minute Film School on Punch TV. Today we're talking about music in movies. Of course, that's a big topic that could generally be divided into 2 parts, the soundtrack and the score. Today we're just going to look at the score and how it can affect storytelling. There are all kinds of technical aspects to film music, from syncing to recording methods, but let's just focus on the basics. We've only got 5 minutes, remember. So, what does music do in a movie? Well, it can do a lot of things. Mostly, it creates emotion and enhances storytelling. One of the biggest things it does is establishes tone. Think about the famous John Williams scores from Jaws, Star Wars, or Indiana Jones. Jaws inspires tension and fear, while Star Wars and Indy scores create a vibe of swashbuckling adventure. There's the music of Danny Elfman and the quirky tone it brings to Tim Burton's movies, or the epicness of Hans Zimmer scores in Chris Nolan movies. These scores help make Batman, a guy that dresses up in a bat suit to fight crime, seem like a plausible, serious idea. Sometimes a film can establish theme or character. Think of the Imperial March every time Darth Vader walks on screen. Or the Wonder Woman theme from the more recent DC movies. These cues can be blatant or subconscious. They can establish a motif for characters, scenes, or the film as a whole. Music wasn't always a purposeful enhancement to a film, though. In the silent era, you'd have a live piano player tickling the ivories right in the theater. The piano player didn't even interact with the film. They just played so it wasn't quiet in the theater and to drown out the noisy projectors. Eventually, the musician, or even orchestras in some cases, became better matched to what was happening up on the screen, using supplied cue sheets as a guide. Of course, in modern film, the score is an integral piece of the puzzle, hard-coded to the movie itself. But how do they do it? The composer is usually shown a rough cut of the film before editing is locked. They can collaborate with the director on what style and tone the film is meant to have. This is where spotting happens, where the composer takes precise timing notes on where each cue starts, how long it lasts, where it may need to be matched to the film, like a scary orchestra stab when the monster jumps out. In some cases, like E.T., Spielberg trusted John Williams so much he gave him total freedom. He asked Williams to record the cue without the movie, then re-edited the scenes later to match the music itself. But let's take a quick look at how music can affect the tone of a film. I recut a quick piece from a seminal scene from Steven Spielberg's Jaws, put different styles of music to it so you can see how it changes the entire context of the scene. First, the original. Okay, so we know this creates fear, tension, and confusion as Chief Brody and then the beachgoers notice that something is wrong in the water. Now let's try a piece of music that's more haunting. It's similar, but instead of confusion and dread, it feels more like something powerful is unfolding. It has a different kind of weight, like you're watching an Oscar-winning tragedy film rather than a horror movie. Now something totally different, a much goofier song. Notice how the people seem like they're running around in a beach comedy? The confusion seems funnier, like a Chaplin movie. They're running down the beach, they're running back up the beach. Most of the dread is gone, and a lot of what's there is just because you know what Jaws is about. You can see how important music can be, how it can enhance your storytelling, even change the context of a famous movie right before your ears. Hey, let's play some sad music because we're out of time. But that gives you some idea of how a movie score can be very important to establishing character or even the kind of story you're telling. Thanks for watching. I'm Craig Silliphant, the Movie Geek. This is 5 Minute Film School for Punch TV.
Punch TV is brought to you in part by Amazing Stories, providing Saskatoon with comics, games, toys, graphic novels, t-shirts, and more for over 22 years. Online at AmazingStoriesComics.com. In person on 8th Street in Saskatoon.
Now, I'm a collector of things that are very large and heavy, and you seem to be the collector of the things that couldn't be heavier. You're pretty much collecting. You're collecting. This is all paper. This is wood. Yeah. Just a collection of like vinyl. All right, Ron. I love your collection. I've known you for a long time. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about collecting. When did you start collecting?
Well, it wasn't at the time. I didn't know I was starting to collect. I bought my first record in 1962. It was a 45 of Gene Pitney, and I remember my second single was Brian Hyland, Sealed with a Kiss. After that, I lost track. I was buying so many 45s, I thought I should switch to albums, then I won't have to buy as much. Well, almost 6,000 albums later. So it wasn't really a conscious thing. I wanted the music, and we went to a lot of house parties and that, and we all took records over to house parties.
Now, do you have the records from those times, from the 60s?
Oh, yes, definitely, definitely.
So this is something that you've been collecting, you've been keeping everything. Have you traveled with them to different locations probably throughout the world? Or?
I guess not throughout the world, but you mean actually moving the collection?
Yeah.
No, we moved here from Ontario, and I had about half of what I have now. So that was a big one, and we've been in this house for, I don't know, 20, 30 years, so we're not going anywhere after this.
I was going to say, I think that's the thing about collecting. You don't want to move. You want to keep your stuff all the time. Keep it all the time. Okay, so where are you buying records now?
I do some mail order, and one of my biggest suppliers is Get Hip Records in the States. When I had my record store, they were one of our major suppliers of imports. And after I closed the store down, I phoned Greg from Get Hip and says, I got to be honest, I've closed down my home-based business. I was selling them out of the house for a while too. And I'm just on my own now. Can I still get my stuff wholesale from you? And I left him a message, and about 2 minutes later, the phone rings, and he says, "What the F you talking about? Of course we'll keep dealing. You're ordering more stuff than some of our stores are." So that's where I get most of them. I don't like buying used unless I really have to, if it's something I really want, because you never know about the condition of them. That's the trouble. Just by looking at them, you can't always tell.
Now, I know that you are a huge collector. Are you more like a hunter, where you're hunting for records? You're more of a gatherer, where you just kind of find things here and there?
Well, a bit of both. Right now, I don't think there's any particular albums I'm looking for anymore. I've got them all. But every now and then I'll read something and say, I never did get that album. Then I start looking for it. And if I can get it new, that's always my first choice. But if I'm in a different city, I do a bit of traveling. And if I'm in a used record store, then I definitely will look. And then I will take a chance. If it's something I really want, I'll get it.
So different genres, or you kind of set yourself to one different genre right now? Or
No. I have everything except rap and opera.
Yeah.
You name a genre, I've got it, because I love variety. Most of it's rock. I'd say probably a little more than half the collection is rock, underground rock. Not very much mainstream stuff at all.
Store closes down, you have all those records. Did you keep them, or did you sell them? Were you like...
No, we sold them. Yeah, it was just so easy to sell them. I kept a few, the things that I was missing. So, something I wouldn't maybe go out and buy, but very well, it's here now anyway. And we just had a big sale and got rid of most of them. I gave a few away to some friends and that. And that was it. We didn't have much left because we were about the only store in town that was still selling new vinyl at the time. So.
What a sad thing that was. I remember when your store closed. I remember you moving from the bus mall to the other store, and I can see things were changing at that time. And so many memories. I don't know if anybody would be watching would remember, but there's so many memories of just you, the store, the TV show. Like when Shaw first happened, CFCR was actually on Shaw Cable 10. So that was amazing. I remember listening to music at 10 o'clock, maybe a drink in my hand. I can't remember, but listening to you, the records being spun on TV, which was amazing. So.
Yeah, Shaw, well, at the time it was Saskatoon Telecable came to us, and it was Bob Anderson. Says, I understand you guys are trying to start your own community radio station. Would you like to use our license while you're making your application to the CRTC? And that was a godsend. So we were on cable FM and on Channel 10 on TV as the background music for Saskatoon Telecable. And that's how we got community radio going.
And okay, so now you're still doing you're still doing your radio show, and it's going strong. Are you actually doing it here in Saskatoon with the same people now, or?
Well, it's with community radio, and it's myself and two other what I call young. Well, of course, to me, everyone's young now. Two younger guys, and all our tastes are pretty much the same. Although some people say they like to guess after the first songs, as the first songs being played every week, they're trying to guess which one of the three of us is hosting that night. So it's all vinyl. We're the longest running show in Canada, as far as I know, 35 years now. And it's all vinyl, and it's an underground rock program, and it's mostly artists that most people will never ever hear of.
Wow, amazing. Well, thank you very much for being on The Collector. You have a huge collection. A lot of people don't understand the importance of vinyl, what it was back in the day, and there's a lot of people that are getting back into it, which is awesome. But this is the man who is brought me my childhood. Him and Arthur Fonzarelli, you and the Fonz.
The Fonz, good old Fonz, yeah. He never came in our store, though. We had a lot of other famous people, not the Fonz.
Not the Fonz. Okay, thanks, Ron.
So, in addition to being comic book and movie geeks and all that stuff, we're also really nerdy about music. And Craig has a pretty, awesome guitar collection. So, he brought in a few today to talk about why did you select these three particular models?
I think two of these are newer for me. These two here, and this one is my go-to that I always play with. Sadly, I did leave my American Stratocaster at home, and that was my first electric guitar that I got when I was a teenager. And I think it's probably feeling a little bit neglected, but I can only carry so much stuff. So
true enough. I think a lot of people start with the Strat because it's inexpensive and it's a pretty reliable model.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's like a very standard rock and roll guitar, and I mean, not just rock and roll. It's very versatile. Plays blues, rock, anything like.
So, okay, obviously they look pretty, you know, and they have different designs. Like, does that actually make a difference in the sound?
For sure. In fact, when like we're recording stuff, I'll use different guitars for different things. So the Telecaster here, again, is a very standard. It's like the sister or cousin to the Stratocaster. This is something you'll see like Bruce Springsteen or any of those guys playing. And it's again, a pretty versatile guitar, but it also just has this beautiful tone that works really well for anything from blues to country and western and stuff like that. You've got the Gibson Les Paul here, which is something that you'd see, you know, guys like Slash or Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin will play something like that. And it has a just like a more of a rougher tone, I guess I would say. And then of course the Gretsch here, just a beautiful guitar. It's hollow with F holes on it. And it just has this like full beautiful tone, and of course it also has the little whammy bar on there, which isn't like the whammy bar you'd see on a crazy like rock and roll heavy metal Ibanez guitar. It's a very subtle thing, so you get kind of those more like that sort of rockabilly. A lot of rockabilly
surf
players,
guitar-y
surf
kinda.
guitar, rockabilly, that kind of stuff. So for sure, the guitar is totally, each one has a distinct tone.
Do you use the whammy bar a lot?
Not really. Not since I was in high school and heavy metal was a thing, but or a big thing. But I definitely use the whammy bar on the Gretsch for certain things. Like if I again want that sort of surf tone and you know, like Chris Isaak's Wicked Game or something. That's a good one to play with a whammy bar.
It's so pretty, and like all the nice little details, like especially like in the Gibson, you've got like this mother of pearl inlay. So like obviously that's probably bigger bucks than your basic Fender.
Yeah, and like rosewood neck and everything like that too. So definitely, I was actually looking for a guitar exactly like that for a long time, and just happened to pop up one day. The bane of my existence has become the Facebook local gear exchange.
I know, right?
So I bought 2 of these guitars from guys on there, as opposed to something like this that I would have bought at like Long and McQuaid or wherever, and you know, well, after high school for this one. But.
So for those of you just starting out, like what words of advice could you give to a burgeoning guitar shredder who wants to like get something that's just maybe a step up from that beginner kit?
Well, what I would say actually is I was sort of forced to do this, and you don't really want to if you're especially a teenager starting out and you want to play some loud guitar. But I was forced to start with an acoustic guitar, and the action on them is like they're much harder to play than something like this. So once you get used to playing an acoustic guitar, and especially learning bar chords and stuff on them, it like switching to an electric is your fingers are just so much more trained to be able to do that stuff. So I would say go get a nice acoustic, and you can go get like a nice Yamaha acoustic for, you know, a couple $100 really. So something like these would be more in the, you know, $1,000 to $2,000 range. And even you can go way more expensive than that too, but you can get a decent acoustic for that. I would say too, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of snobbery around certain guitars, and you know, you want to get like American style instead of Korean or Japanese or something, because they use different woods and different methods of construction and stuff. But I mean, if you're just learning to play, it doesn't really matter as long as it isn't like buzzing or something and it sounds fine. Then there's no barrier to entry. You know, they used to sell all those like Sears guitars or whatever, you know what I mean? And they work just fine. My dad has one that it looks like a Stratocaster, and it's not. It'd be way cheaper, but it's for learning to play. It'd be perfectly fine.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we are out of time, and I know this is just scratching the surface of your collection. Chris is also going to show off some of his collection during Tweet Beat, so stay tuned for that, and thank you for bringing in your guitars.
You are welcome.
All right, we'll be right back after this.
Punch TV is brought to you in part by Amazing Stories, providing Saskatoon with comics, games, toys, graphic novels, t-shirts, and more for over 22 years. Online at AmazingStoriesComics.com, in person on 8th Street in Saskatoon.
Comics and rock rock and roll have gone hand in hand for a really long time, but lately a ton of musicians and acts are getting in on it. Lights has a new comic, even Rush has put out a comic, and there's always been comics about bands. So I want to quickly mention a few that you should probably get your hands on, and maybe some that you might want to avoid. This one is really awesome. Henry and Glenn Forever and Ever. And this is Glenn Danzig and Henry Rollins in a fictitious relationship that they have. It's hilarious and great. Death Clock. Awesome cartoon, great music by Brendan Small. He actually has a new comic out called Galacticon, which is stupendously great and you should get your hands on. This does not get the respect that it deserves. Belle and Sebastian put out a comic. DMC from Run DMC, now Daryl Makes Comics. This is an awesome compilation. This is put out by Rock and Roll Biographies, and they are always putting out new stuff. This is a great book. It's got stories about the origins of Ozzy, Metallica, Poison, you name it, hard rock, they're in here. The Eminem in My Skin, his story in comic book form. And then we also have some really other great stuff. I'm a huge fan of Ed Piskor's Hip Hop Family Tree. It tells the story of hip hop in comic form. So if you're not sure about the origins and you want to find out who the movers and shakers were in the beginning, go back to this encyclopedia. You'll learn a lot and it's really entertaining. Got to take a nod to DC. This was a version of Black Canary, where Black Canary actually has a band, but of course she can also kill with her voice, so sometimes this is a problem with certain audiences. Umbrella Academy, pretty fun little comic. This is from My Morning Jacket. Galacticon, as I mentioned. Gwar even has a comic. 12 Reasons to Die, Wu-Tang Clan, awesome. There's a record that if you listen to it, you are cursed and will die. And this is the Rush comic, which I mentioned, which is great. And of course, Archie, the Ramones. You can't go wrong with a little guest appearance of the Ramones and the Archie. So these are great little comics to pick up. There's tons of stuff out there. These are just a few suggestions to get you started. So enjoy comics and rock and roll. Music is where it's at. Well, that wraps up another episode. A big thank you to Ron for letting us come into his home and have a look at his collection and hear all those great stories. Seriously, we could have like a Punch episode series on just Ron. So we'll definitely have to go back and hear some more tales about music, not only in Saskatoon, but in the early days in Canada. I also want to thank our regular crew. Thank you to Craig, thank you to Hank and Tony, and thank you to you for watching. And in the meantime, keep your dukes up.
Tweet Beat on Shaw TV. And we're all done.